How are you doing, Mr. Moore?
Doing well, and thank you for having me today. I do want to comment just a moment on that game last night. Your analysis was spot on. I was actually at the game last night. I got to watch it. It was great.
Yeah, it was good stuff. And I'll tell you what, anytime you root for the Cowboys, you're welcome on this show,
right.
and you can just pull up a chair anytime you want to. We're
Thank
pretty
you.
excited. I just want to tell you, Dana, just so you know, Bob gets excited about a few things. Cardinals is one of them, which I don't understand, but the St. Louis. But I'll tell you, he was definitely excited for the fact that you were coming on this show, and I'm very happy that you're here. Why don't you do us a real quick introduction of yourself and of your organization and what it does?
Well, again, thank you for having me on this morning. I work for the Texas Trucking Association, and prior to that, 3.5 years ago, I actually retired from the Texas Department of Public Safety, the Highway Patrol, where I was an instructor in the Commercial Vehicle Enforcement section, and went to work for TXTA as their Director of Policy and Government Relations. And now I get to actually have an impact on some of the laws that needed to be passed on behalf of the trucking industry.
That's great. I mean, as a lobbyist and as an individual that goes out there and meets with our policy makers and does and helps make these changes that we definitely need to make. How have you seen safety being a great, an even bigger emphasis in these policy decisions?
Oh, well, as we all know, if we have a carrier or driver who is unsafe, it affects the entire industry, everything. If you're not safe, you're not performing your duty. So being there, particularly working with legislatures now and the legislators now, I've learned something. A representative, a senator, they can't know everything. I mean, they know, what they came from, their occupation, their profession, but they don't know a lot about everything that they have to actually pass laws on. So this gives me an opportunity to actually educate these folks as to what the trucking industry is about and what the trucking industry needs, particularly when it comes to safety and in this case, lawsuit reform.
Yeah, and speaking of some of that, one of the big ones that I believe went into effect September 1st was House Bill 19. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. There were actually two issues, two different bills that were filed. The one that went through, that we pushed through, was House Bill 19. There was a separate bill that came out of the Senate that was going to address abuses in medical billing. The good thing that happened during this one, this session, is that there were two separate Texas Supreme Court decisions that came out relating to what's called paid and incurred. And that's where you're able to collect either what you paid or what you incurred. Seems fair. But the attorneys were able to sidestep that and get significantly more damages than what we actually would have normally cost. And the Supreme Court came out with a couple of decisions that actually were better than the bill that was filed. So the bill concerning paid and incurred was allowed to die a natural death, which was actually very, very good for the industry.
Yeah, and before we go to House Bill 19, you bring up a great point, because I know when we talked, and you gave your speech at the luncheon, it was, there were some good laws and bills passed, but also there was some great work done on some bills and laws that were against carriers that got kind of tossed out as well, right?
There was a few of them. One in particular had to do with prohibiting the use of an engine braking, and we've actually met a couple of times with the particular representative's office and explained to them that that was really a safety device. You have obviously the brakes themselves, you have the transmission, and then you have the engine brake. And to take the engine brake away was something that we as an association just could not support, because it's a safety device.
Yeah, that's great. I think, being able to educate and understand, I mean, fundamentally, everyone outside trucking, all they know of an engine brake is a loud noise. And I believe they consider it a nuisance and don't relatively understand what causes that loud noise, right? And that's what we're talking about. And you're able to talk to the policymakers and re-educate them on what we're doing here with that.
Exactly. And, their issue was not the brake or the engine brake. Their issue was noise. And I think we all can recognize that can be somewhat of a nuisance. And so we told them that we would be more than happy to support them in some reasonable legislation that would actually address the noise. But to take away the safety device was just not important.
Fantastic. So talk about House Bill 19.
Yeah. What was House Bill 19?
Oh, this was a big one. As you can well guess, you drive down the road, you see all the billboard attorneys. That's who we were up against. And they're well funded because they're making a lot of money off the backs of the trucking industry. At least they were anyway. So the easiest way to describe this is that before September 1st, these plaintiffs' attorneys were able to come in and present just troves of evidence that had nothing to do with the crash or the driver, nothing to do with it. They would go back previous inspections, looking at the company's safety culture, things that had nothing to do with the crash. And what they were using this for is to poison the jury against the trucking company and against the driver. So House Bill 19, we believe, is going to correct this issue. Now, with the trucking industry and the owners, everybody understands that things do happen. Drivers make mistakes, companies make mistakes. And, if someone is injured, we want them to be made whole, but not to the point of being abused. So House Bill 19 kind of follows the criminal court. Now, if you're accused of a crime, the first part of the trial is, are you guilty or not? And then if you're guilty, then you go to the second phase for punishment. Well, that's what's going to happen now in House Bill 19. Now, in order for this process to occur, it's called bifurcation. The carrier must request it, or whoever's being sued has to request it. And then secondly, and this is very important, the carrier absolutely must take responsibility right up front for the driver as an employee. So the company is saying, this person was driving for us, we're responsible for his or her actions. And then the evidence that can be submitted has to deal directly with crash. So we're not going back and looking at, things like negligent hiring and things like that. We're looking at what caused the crash and how much responsibility this driver or carrier may have had. Now, if there is no responsibility found for the driver, we're done. If, however, there is a finding of gross negligence, and that's a pretty high bar to meet. If there's gross negligence, then the second trial phase comes in, and that's when everything's allowed to come in. You're looking at previous inspections and applications for employment. Any number of things could come in at that time.
And then we want you to come in and have some questions. But I got one. You mentioned the company has to say we're responsible, they're our employee. How does that cross the line with owner-operators? Because I know they try to distinguish those lines. But when it comes to safety, it doesn't matter. Is that correct? Or
that is correct. An owner-operator, for the purposes of, first of all, regulations themselves, and also for the civil liability, owner-operator is considered to be an employee for that particular situation.
Okay. I have a real quick question before we get to a caller or two. One of mine is, this is a precedent setting, correct? Across the United States, this actually opens the door for bills and to be used like this across the country to help this tort reform in this business, correct?
Absolutely. We are getting calls constantly from around the country, other associations reaching out to us, asking us, how did you guys do this? And we had some fantastic legislators who carried and sponsored and signed on to the bill. You really have to spend a lot of time, and I hate to say it, but you got to spend a little bit of money in order to for advertising, counter advertising. We were made out, if you watched any of the TV commercials, we were made out to be, just a horrible, horrible industry. And of course, what they sometimes fail to mention, they talk about these big trucks. They actually are using data that is for trucks that are 10,001 pounds or more, including, like, for example, I have a dually that I pull my RV with. If I get in my dually and drive to the HEB or the grocery store and I get involved in a crash, I'm recorded as a commercial vehicle. So the stats were way, way off. And another thing that they tried to kind of hide was the fact that in the vast, vast majority of car-truck collisions, the entity that's at fault is not the truck; it's the car.
It is no it's no shock to us being in the business and in the industry and helping support the drivers out there and the professional drivers out there. It is no shock to us to understand that the vast majority of the reasons and the causes is not the professional behind the wheel, but what we would call the four-wheeler or the non-professional behind the wheel making a mistake and not doing something. So we truly see that. Hey, we have a caller on the line. If you don't mind taking a call, we have some questions. Who do you got, producer?
Yeah, so first up, this comes from Brian Winsauer. So he said that he started his driving career back in 1992, and the first open Texas inspection he saw was in 2001. However, now they're routinely open throughout the state. So the question is, what prompted Texas to so significantly expand their commercial motor vehicle enforcement efforts, and will they continue this expansion going forward?
Okay, sure. I think I can answer that. When you're talking about Texas DPS and some local agencies, they receive federal funds. And so the federal government is primarily responsible for all the activity that's going out there. Now, they don't have officers that, obviously, except for USDOT, and they're usually at fixed facilities along the border. But they fund Texas DPS and the other 49 states, and including territories as well. They fund the enforcement there. So the other thing that has made a somewhat of an impact is that back when they opened up the border initially for cross traffic, and it was being regulated like in the border zones, wherever there was a customs entry for commercial vehicles, immediately after a truck coming out of Mexico would come into the United States after being checked by USDOT, it would actually, in customs, it would actually come immediately into a DPS facility where it might get checked again, or it might be weighed, looking for state law violations. Well, what's happened is a DPS has begun to shut those facilities down, and they're moving those resources more to the interior of the state.
Great question, and do you have another one, Dylan? You got one more?
Yes, we got Edward Lester on the line. Edward, what do you got for us today, sir?
All right, we'll continue to wait and see if we can get Edward. Hey, so when we talk about this, how many lobbyists do you typically have in your organization inside the Capitol? I'm just curious how large your organization in there actually, or is it mainly you doing all the work? Do you have a large group of inside the Capitol building working to help promote the Texas industry?
Not at all. Our organization, there are two of us that are full-time, myself and our CEO, President John Esparza. We're both registered lobbyists. Now, TXTA does have on retainer a very, very good contract lobbyist. And it's all about access. It's all about, being able to talk to people. And between John and myself and our contract lobbyist, Mr. Borski, we're able to actually reach out to the critical legislators or the representatives, the senators. and actually have discussions with them. Like I said, these representatives and senators, they don't know the trucking industry, nor should they really know the trucking industry. They're like everybody else. They see a truck go down the road, they see the truck, pulling up to the store, making deliveries, but they don't really understand what goes on behind the scenes. And so we're able to actually legitimately educate them into what goes on and why we're requesting whatever we're requesting.
Thank you very much. Hey, we got time for one more caller. Who do you got?
Yeah, we got Lonnie Payne on the line. Lonnie, what do you got for us today, sir?
What's going on, Lonnie?
Good morning, sir. Thank you, sir, for taking the time to join us this morning. I was wondering, from a professional standpoint and both a corporate standpoint, is there anything that we can do, or what can we do to assist with the legislation in these areas, if anything?
Well, that's a very good question. Of course, from an industry standpoint, you want to be as safe as possible. It's a whole lot easier to avoid a problem than try to come back in and fix it, later on. And then another thing I would tell the viewers is educate yourself when you vote, because it does make a difference. Absolutely. As you might well guess, many of the elected representatives are attorneys themselves, and that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. But sometimes it puts them in the middle of a controversy, and they're not really sure which way to go on it. But I would say educate yourself on who your elected representative is. That's extremely important.
Hey, Dana, man, I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you do when you come in here. I appreciate you actually joining us here at BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. We want very much for you to come back. We want to have the opportunity to make sure that we get some better questions, right, Bob? We got to make sure that we have great questions for somebody that has great information like yourself. So if we invite you back, are you willing to come back?
Absolutely. Just anytime you ask, I'll be here.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. And
Thank you.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you a lot.